Hey everyone, this is Jeff Risen from the Detroit Lions podcast and Lions Wire. And since we can't do a live show this week with me and Chris being on separate schedules, it's time for a mailbag. Let's do it. All right. Asked the Patreon Slack channel for some questions and they delivered. Got several pages here. I kind of clustered some of these together. I actually did skim through these a little bit this time, just to make sure that there weren't a lot of redundancies and sort of lump the general questions together. So thanks for the questions. And if you want to get in on that, $1 a month gets you on the smartest internet chat, Lions-wise. Much anywhere. Yeah, sweet. A lot of good discussions today. By the way, I am recording this. It is Tuesday evening. The Lions just announced today that they signed, they brought back CJ Moore, which is an interesting one. And they also signed Kyle Pico, defensive tackle who just played the best year of his career with the Tennessee Titans under new defensive line coach Terrell Williams. Interesting moves. It's kind of weird that they brought Moore back after his suspension. Remember, he was part of the group with Jameson Williams. JMO only wound up missing 4 games, but CJ Moore was one of the people, along with Quintez Cephas and Demetrius Taylor and somebody else, Rashad Berry maybe? I don't even remember, but they're not with the team anymore. But the Lions did bring CJ Moore back. He instantly becomes the number 3 safety on the depth chart by the simple fact that he's played in the NFL before, because he also had, not at safety anyways. So this will be interesting to see how he fits back in with the special teams and also if he gets some run on defense. He hasn't been terrible when he's played defense, when he's been given a chance. Not that it's been a big part of his role. He's on the roster for special teams, and they clearly brought him back for special teams. That would be the presumption. So we'll see what we got with that. But it's interesting. It spices up the defensive back room a little bit more, gives us a little bit more depth. Anyways, 2 questions. All right. Got a couple here. From Big Wes, said, do you think Brad Holmes, the general manager, signs any vets at offensive tackle and safety? Now that the draft is over, we are very thin at both positions. And then Paul Walker follows up with this follow-up to Wes's question. With the issues they made on the O-line being mainly interior guys, do you think they see Sorsdal as a tackle? He seems to be the only backup who could actually play tackle to me. Okay, these are good questions. They're interrelated. I like them. We did get the safety question. That came in after Wes asked it. It's still a pertinent question because I do think that there's still room for a safety to come onto this team. Whether it's Justin Simmons, although I really just don't think they're paying him, man. I'd love it. I'd sign him. I'm not too worried about the price tag, but I don't think that that's where they're looking. Just, I don't know. Hope I'm wrong there because he would be a great fit in. If you are looking at veterans, look for guys that have played in the system before. One guy that's still out there, to my knowledge anyways, is John Johnson from the Rams, who I also got to see with the Browns. Was very good with the Rams, earned a great free agent contract with the Browns. Stunk in Cleveland, went back to Los Angeles, wasn't a lot better last year. He's back out there again. He's functional depth. He's started games. Sort of plays a different style than Moore. So CJ Moore coming back, if you remember him with his Lions days, pretty good ball hawk. Can go get the ball in the air, decent in coverage. You really don't want him coming down. You really don't want him tackling. This is not what he does. And by the way, that's what Brandon Joseph's biggest problem is. Who is the other backup safety right now? Open field tackling, not what he's good at. Not what he's here for. So a guy like Johnson who can actually come up and do some things on run support would be nice. That's the caliber of player that I'm looking for. Now to the offensive line, it's interesting because they drafted 2 guys in Giovanni Manu and Christian Mahogany, who I freaking love. And they have already told us that they kind of see Manu as a guard, but they're kind of going to let his progress and whatever happens guide him. And I like that. But yeah, backup tackle there's still room there. I'm good with Mahogany being a backup guard. I think he's going to start someday. I think he'll start in 2025. once Kevin Zeitler moves on after his one season as a free agent, and he's 34 years old. I love Mahogany. I said it on the live show that we did last week with Chris. He was a top 50 player for me. So the fact that they got him where they did, that's brilliant to me. I'm not worried about any discrepancy in his leg length. It clearly didn't bother him at Boston College. He's not the most athletic on the field. He doesn't play to the level that he tested to. But if you need him to go one gap either way, power, he's good enough. I'm very, very happy with that. So backup tackle, yeah, and it's interesting because they did add to the interior. And Colby Sorsdal, they told us all last year that they were trying to work him in at a guard, but they brought Alshika back. They brought Graham Glasgow back. He's your backup center. So they do need sort of that flexibility. And we're going to get the undrafted free agent centers later, because there's a few of them that are there with interest, but I do wonder if Colby Sorsdal is destined to go back to tackle, because right now the only real backup tackles they have are Connor Galvin, 6'9" undrafted free agent from UCF last year. Wasn't all that impressive I shouldn't say that. He had one really good preseason game. And the other two times, they figured out a little bit that if you start low and stay low, he can't really get low enough to stop you. But he's worth the developmental curve, certainly. There's more upside there than there ever was with Matt Nelson, so I'm happy with that. But the only other one's Dan Skipper, and they have told us by their actions in the past that they don't see him playing as a tackle. They see him as an extra tackle, like the blocking tight end, supersized tackle. He's great at that. He's probably the best in the league at that. But playing, if Taylor Decker gets hurt at left tackle or Penny Sewell gets hurt at right tackle, they've tended to look elsewhere. So I don't know. I love Skip. I'd be happy to try him, but I kind of think that there's still room if Sorsdal, if they realize that maybe they're better at guard now than they were last year, and they want to leave Sorsdal at tackle. That's something that we'll see. We do have easy for me to say. We have rookie mini camp coming up this weekend. I will be there. At least for the first day and a half of that. And hopefully we get to ask some questions. And Sorsdal's fate is a common question. That's something that we will definitely try to figure out, because don't know. I can just guess at this point, but my guess would be that they're probably looking at him maybe at going back to tackle, because he was pretty good there at William and Mary. It didn't show a tremendous amount of growth at guard, but again, they kind of threw him in there. He'd never played it before. Like, you got to keep your expectations parsed there for a fifth-round draft pick going up from the FCS level. So, good questions. Next, guys. This is a good one. And these are sort of interrelated. I'm going to make them even more interrelated. Mike asks, who makes the biggest improvements under Coach Terrell Williams? And then Gmart also asks in last year, Iffy Atumalifonwu and Derek Barnes took big steps forward their third year. Do you think Josh Paschal has a chance to do something like that in his third year this season? And I'm going to put those together because I do think that Josh Paschal is the number one candidate to improve under Terrell Williams. Nothing against the guys that were here before, John Scott, Todd Wash. I don't think that Josh Paschal. And again, I don't want to put the blame on the coaches, because some of it goes certainly on Paschal himself. Some of it goes on the injuries. He's had trouble staying on the field, has had trouble staying in the practice. I don't think he's been reached by the coaching staff yet. And this is another shot for him to prove that he can be reached by the coaching staff, specifically his position coaches. We need to see it, because we do need to see some growth here. And he is a great candidate to do it. He was a second-round pick. I liked him a lot coming out of Kentucky. I thought that he was a guy who could start outside and attack inside if he needed to, but also, at the size he was at the time, could do a lot on the edge in the Romeo Okwara role, in the Trey Flowers role to go back a regime. And instead they got a little bit heavier, and I'm not sure it's worked for him. He's not a power-oriented player. He doesn't have that sort of quickness, that sort of burst to get away with it at his size. So I'm kind of hoping that they find a spot for him where it works. and where he can stay healthy, because he would certainly benefit from a guy like Terrell Williams, who has done a lot of good things with a lot of players, and Harold Landry being one of them. That the ceiling is there for Pascal. I just hope that the elevator isn't stuck, and I hope that he's one of the breakouts, because he would be somebody that I would love to see break out as somebody who championed him in the draft process and has been frustrated by the relative lack of development that we've seen from Pascal. And again, injuries have played a lot into it, and that can't get ignored either. But he's certainly a good candidate for that. By the way, Mike also asked a supplemental question here, and I like it because it ties into back with the offensive line thing. Should the potential of offensive line coach Hank Fraley leaving concern us for Giovanni Manu's development after this year? Okay. It's a good question, because we don't know what we have in Manu yet. I still haven't been able to get my hands on anything other than another highlight tape, which featured a lot of the same highlights that we've all seen that are out there from the University of British Columbia. Hoping for more soon. But I'm really looking forward to seeing him this weekend and seeing what they've got, just seeing him in person, because you don't see 6'7", 6'8", 350-pound dudes just walking around every day. Like, doesn't look like. I'm just planet theory there, man. I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to see how he moves. Excited to see where they start him, what he can offer. First impressions are important, and that's I'm looking forward to getting a first impression on him in person. But for the long term, I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm going to worry about what's in front of us right now, which is 2024. If Hank Fraley gets another gig somewhere else after this year, if Ben Johnson does, I'm going to worry about that then. Until then, I'm going to enjoy that we've got them for 2024 and maximize the hell out of what we've got while we've still got them, because they are both fantastic coaches. Hank has done a great job at developing offensive line talent. And by the way, not just like bringing guys, along, but the fact that he's made Frank Regnow and Penei Sewell that much better under his tutelage. Like, he works really well with the top end guys. Taylor Decker has gotten a lot better, more consistent since Hank Fraley took over. There's assistants under Frank that are going to be working more probably with the younger guys, quite frankly. And I think that's, again, it's sort of grooming a replacement in-house, which is something that the Lions have tried to do with mixed success. We'll see on that, but I'll worry about 2025 when we get there, man. I'm ready to enjoy 2024 and a possible Super Bowl run. And if they win the Super Bowl, and they can, it'll make a lot of those worries feel a lot better in time. All right. Good question here from Ken in Mulberry, related to the offensive line. Do you think Frank Regnow, All-Pro center Frank Regnow, for the uninitiated? Hopefully, if you're watching this, you know who Frank Regnow is. If I just say Frank, I mean, yeah, that's it. We're the Lions, baby. Let's go. You think Frank will be able to hold up for the entire season? Everything seems to be revolving around backup guards, while the real weakness on our offensive line could be backup center and backup offensive tackle. Well, I agree with you that offensive tackle backup is still a problem. And they haven't really addressed that. Although I will say, what's out there? Like, look at the free agent offensive lineman, and I will refer you to a piece that I wrote for Lions Wire this week, where I tried to write the 10 best available free agents for the Lions to sign, and I couldn't find more than 3. It's barren, guys. There's not much out there that's better than that's proven better than what we've got. And I'm not going to bring somebody in, Bobby Hart as an example, that's going to take away from the developmental time of Giovanni Manu and the developmental time of Colby Sorsdal, and potentially risk losing them to waivers because we're keeping a veteran who sucks in Bobby Hart. Sorry, Bobby, but you do. Catches trace. I don't mean to be that rude or blunt, but I'm not a fan. Like, I would rather develop what you're own. What is this regime good at? Developing talent. Let's let them develop it. Does it hurt us in the short term? Yeah, it does. Let's hope. Knocking on some wood here that we'll have to find out just how bad that might be. But for the backup center role, Graham Glasgow is your backup center. He's capable. They have 3 UDFA centers in. I don't have their names written down in front of me, but I like the guy from UCLA. I think he's got it. Also, Eguakun from Florida can play guard and center. He's an interesting one. We'll see. That's going to be a very interesting battle at rookie minicamp this weekend to see which of those they keep, if any. But we saw Eguakun down at the Senior Bowl, and he is not without some ability. So I'm going to guess that at least one of those guys, and probably 2, stick on at least the practice squad. Maybe one of them sneaks onto the final 53. We'll see about that. We got to see what we've got first. But I think that's where they're at with that. And then, as they did in the playoffs, if Frank can't go, Graham slides in, and then you're dealing with Alshika, Sorsdal, Mahogany, whoever. Hopefully it's Mahogany, because I'm really excited about Christian Mahogany. He was my draft crush this year. Just watching him, it made me he's so good. I'm just really excited about it. And I hope that he proves me right on that one, because it would be disappointing if he didn't. But that's where we're at with the interior linemen there. A lot of questions about DPJ and the wide receivers. I'm going to sort of lump them all together. They're like 4 of the next 5 questions here. So let's talk about the wide receivers. Let's talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones. The base question here is, do I think that Donovan Peoples-Jones, DPJ, and in our parlance, can fill the role that Josh Reynolds filled in 2022 and 2023? And my short answer is probably. My more expansive answer is, I think we have all gone a little, I think we've over-glamorized what Josh Reynolds did. He got open very well. Other than in the NFC Championship game, he caught the ball very well. He was a good blocker. He was a good teammate. I've seen all those things from DPJ. Saw it firsthand when I covered him in Cleveland. He stepped up when needed in the year where Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. both didn't. He put up better numbers that year in Cleveland with the chaos that was going around him in that offense. Put up better numbers that year than Josh Reynolds ever did in Detroit. He's got the potential. Chris and I talked about it again last week on the live show. He looks like he's inflated his upper body. And that was one of the concerns that you had with DPJ, or at least one of the ones that I saw with him in Cleveland, was that he couldn't get off the press very well. He needed to get stronger. Well, we don't know how functional that strength is, but damn, man, he looks built. So he's been working at it. He's a very bright guy. I dare say he's almost too smart. I think he's one of those guys. He almost thinks too much. But there's some talent there. And I'm not concerned too much with the fact that he can be the number 4 receiver, because I do think J-Mo's going to ascend to be the number 2. And I think, yes, he's going to have some foibles. It's not all going to be, perfect. I think he's going to be good. I really do. I think he's going to look. You're going to have to deal with the drops. You're going to have to deal with the occasional misadjustment of tracking the ball in the air. That's just kind of who he is. He's also capable of making spectacular plays, and I think he's going to make enough of those, more than enough of those, to offset the ones where you're like, oh, J-Mo, come on, why? And I think that he's going to be fine with that with Amon-Ra. I think Sam Laporta is going to be 2nd or 3rd on the team in targets. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be 3rd or 4th or possibly 5th on the team in targets. I think you're going to see Khalif Raymond come back healthy and has been a reliable outlook. He's short. He's a good player. Tough as hell. Probably pound for pound the strongest lion on the team, and that includes all the defensive and offensive linemen too. Although, gotta check out Manu because I'm excited about that one. But I I'm not super worried about it. And I'm not worried enough to go out shopping for some other free agent. I will say Traquan Smith is on this roster. This is a guy who had some hype in New Orleans a few years ago when he first got there. It hasn't lived up to expectations for any number of reasons. Some of those are certainly on Traquan. Some of those are on their weird offense, on their quarterbacking carousel that they've had that a lot of my friends who cover the Saints are very tired of. But let's see what we got with him. Let's give him a shot. And then, undrafted rookies that get bonuses like Isaiah Williams they're going to get a shot. I will caution folks, remember, it was 2 years ago when we had all those undrafted free agents that everybody loved at wide receiver. Like, oh, we got like the 3 best undrafted wide receivers. Well, 2 of them are in the UFL now, and I don't know what happened with the other one. So, Surratt was one. Jonathan Adams I know he's in the UFL now. So be careful in overhyping the UDFAs before we see them. And I'm trying very hard not to do that, but there's a lot to like about Isaiah Williams. Interesting, fun player who can also serve as your potential return man. And by the way, so the logistical up, because I just lit up. I'm not glowing. The sun just came out. We have been under tornado watches all day. And I am really washed out right now. So hold on a second. Throw that down a little bit. There we go. All right. Got to get my weather report in. Fun day for those of us who are weather nerds. Prayers out, by the way, to all the people down in the Portage, which is Kalamazoo area, in Union City down there. I know folks down that way. And by the way, that's also where the closest Smoothie King is to me. And a tornado went through and actually touched down about a mile south of my local Smoothie King. Well, local, it's 45 minutes away. But it hit some things, hit a FedEx distribution center down there, it looks like. So, tornadoes are, and by the way, 4-inch diameter hail. That's the size of a grapefruit coming down. Hopefully everybody's okay. And if you're down in that way, hope you're good. And hope you took shelter. Okay. But it's no joke when you get down there. So back to the questions. Sorry for the weather diversion, but I paid a lot of money to get a lot of weather education. I'm going to try to use it every now and then. Wow. Okay, I like this one. What is your prediction for the Lions starting secondary from Shane? All right. Terry and Arnold over here, Carlton Davis over here, Brian Branch in the slot, Kirby Joseph at one safety, and Iffy at the other safety. As long as they're all healthy. But given the histories of all those guys other than Arnold, they're probably going to miss a couple games apiece. And right now, by the way, Brian Branch is on a scooter. I don't know the extent of that injury. That's another thing that I hope to find out this weekend when I'm over in Allen Park. It doesn't sound from what I've heard, through the telephone game, basically. But it's nothing to be too concerned about. But he just, a lot of guys have off-season things. He hasn't publicized it. It's his right. Doesn't need to. But hopefully we find out a little bit of information on that. But that's your starters. Can Ennis Rakestraw challenge for a job? Yeah, but I'll say I think Emmanuel Mosley, if you're going to look for a guy who's going to steal one of those starting spots, it's Emmanuel Mosley, an outside corner. And then what you do then is you play Branch in more of a rover role. Remember, Terry and Arnold went to Alabama as a safety prospect and played safety his first year there before moving to outside cornerback. He's got some of the same skills that Brian Branch does. And by the way, the same sort of playmaking mentality that Brian Branch does. So I wonder if there's some flexibility there that if Emmanuel Mosley goes back healthy, that they can get both those guys on the field. And maybe Branch plays in a pseudo safety role. The hard part there is that Kirby Joseph can really only play the pass. And if he can only really play the run or rush the passer. So you're kind of getting specialized with your safeties there. So that concerns me a little bit, but if everybody's healthy, we're good. If not, then we got to start wondering a little bit. I like this one from Christopher Carlson. What are your favorite and least favorite non-Lions draft classes? So, as a lot of you know, I'm also the managing editor for the Draft Wire at USA Today. I love the NFL draft. I actually started watching 2025 prospects today. I watched Quinn Ewers from Texas, and I sincerely hope that the Lions never have any use for him, because right now, they're not good. Not good. But I'm going to go through and get up to speed with those. But I loved what Washington did. I thought Washington had a fantastic draft. They got Jaden Daniels, who was my top quarterback. They got Johnny Newton in the second round. He was my number one defensive player on the board. And I understand that he fell for some medical concerns about his foot injury, which, by the way, is the exact same foot injury that Terrion Arnold had. Didn't seem to affect Terrion too much. Something to think about. I'll scratch that. Wrong. Self-edit in the middle of it. He had the same foot injury that, not Terrion Arnold, his teammate Kool-Aid McKinstry had. And Johnny's further along in that progress, and I think that's I love that pick. They also got Mike Sainristil, who I thought was a first-round talent. Just a great class for Washington. They did a great job. People are going to like this. I like what Green Bay did. Jordan Morgan's a really good player. Was a guy that I know the Lions liked him a lot. And I know he was under consideration, not necessarily at like the top of their list, had they stayed at 29, but he was on their list. And I know that they liked him quite a bit. I got that from multiple sources. So he's a guy that, if you're going to bag on him, then you're bagging on the Lions scouting staff too, because they liked him. And I liked him too. I think he's a good player. I kind of like what they did throughout the draft. Like every one of them, they gave up too much for a couple players. Edgerrin Cooper as an example. I think they gave up too much to get him, but that's a good football player. Probably the best blitzing second-level linebacker in the draft this year. And that's something that the Lions are going to have to deal with. So I thought the Packers did well. Least favorite. Atlanta. Sorry, Falcons fans. You just pay. Falcons like I'm Ash. This Canadian is rubbing off on me. You just paid Kirk Cousins $160 million. Didn't even tell him that you're drafting Michael Penix, who was not a Penix guy. And it wasn't just because of his age. As I've said before, I'm much more cautious on the injury front with prospects than Brad Holmes is, and that most people are. That's me. That's a me issue. But 2 separate ACLs, 2 separate throwing shoulder AC joint surgeries. I ain't touching that. And the fact that he throws the ball with so little trajectory on deep throws concerns me. The fact that he couldn't throw over the middle at Washington or Indiana concerns me. So I thought they took a guy who was, in my book, not close to as good of a prospect as Hendon Hooker was a year earlier. And they took him at number 8 and probably should have taken him around. I think Penix should have gone around where Hooker went last year. That's where my opinion was on him. So I'm going to laugh at that. Because as a friend of mine said, did they not play this forward? Like, what's going to happen with it? And then, like, they made a wild trade that gave up too much for later on. Like, just not feeling Atlanta. Wasn't feeling Cincinnati's draft too much either. Again, the injuries with Mims scare the crap out of me. We'll see how that works out. He's one of those variables though that like he could wind up being really good. Could also wind up, getting his like 3rd contract in the UFL if the UFL is still around. Hopefully it is. I like the UFL. Michigan Panthers, baby. Let's go. Jake Bates, please sign with Detroit once your contract with the Panthers is up, or at least try in. Open competition is a healthy competition. I know they signed Michigan's old kicker. What's his name? Turner. I don't scout kickers. I don't really scout special teams. I just don't. I check the guys out once they're in there. And I've seen guys kick in person. Like I saw a lot of guys kick, but I'm someone who believes that you should never draft a specialist, punter, kicker, long snapper. Sorry, just who I am. That's where I'm at with that. Chicago, I love the Roma Dunze pick for them. Not a big fan of the Caleb Williams pick. And we've talked enough about that. I'm not scared of Caleb Williams in 2024. Could he be great? Hell yeah, he could. Yeah, he could. I'm going to worry about it when he shows me that he's great, not a second beforehand. And he's not there yet. There's a lot of unteaching to do with him, as is true of all Lincoln Riley quarterbacks. That's not a Caleb Williams thing. That was a Kyler Murray thing. That was a Baker Mayfield thing. You've got to unlearn what you're taught at USC or under Lincoln Riley, because it doesn't translate to the NFL. You've got to unlearn it and relearn how to do some things at the NFL level. And I think that's going to take some time for Caleb Williams to do that, just as it did for Baker Mayfield and as it did for Kyler Murray in Arizona too. So I'm not going to fret that. I'm not going to sweat that. All right. Question about the schedule release, which is Thursday night. I believe it's at 7 p.m. Eastern. I love that the NFL makes the schedule release. Like, they schedule the schedule release. How ridiculous. We already know everybody that they're going to play home and away. We just don't know the sequence yet. The fact that they have made this into an event, God bless the NFL, man. It's spectacular. Who do I want to see opening weekend? Want the 49ers for the opening weekend? No, I don't. And I'll tell you why. I want that game later. I want to play the Dallas Cowboys in week 1. Because the Dallas Cowboys will be starting 2 new offensive linemen. And they also have some changeover on the defensive line. I want them early before their really good offensive line coach and system of getting people up to speed there, before it gets those guys to gel. I want them early. I think they're going to be more dangerous later in the season once the guys that they drafted, by the way, one of them, Cooper Beebe, was a guy that I would have freaking loved in Detroit, but he's in Dallas. Tyler Guyton, by the way, their first-round pick, who will probably wind up being their starting right tackle. I wasn't a fan of his, but he certainly has upside, and the Cowboys have done such a good job at developing offensive line talent in the past. That's the team you want early, so I want them first. The other one that interests me, probably as a primetime game, probably not as the week 1 opener, but it could be, is the Houston Texans. They sort of did in the AFC what the Lions did in the NFC last year. They were up from the ashes. They did it in a very different way, but that's a fun young team with a coach in D'Amico Ryans. So I love D'Amico, loved him as a player in Houston, love him as a coach in Houston. As a lot of you know, I lived in Houston for a while. My family, my son especially, they are Texans fans. And I freely admit, I want to see them do well. So I'm curious when that game will be. That should be I want that to be a Monday night game. I want one of the Packers games to be a primetime game, and I want the Bears in Detroit on Thanksgiving. I want that specific game. I want that. And that's like the only special, like, they're going to be on a lot of primetime games, and I'm going to have to figure out how to stream some of those things, because I don't do Amazon, I don't do Paramount, I don't do any of that stuff. So, might be coming to you for advice on how to watch some of these games later this fall. Because it's just not what I do. After hosting, this is a good question from Basim. After hosting the draft, which would you most like to see host next? Detroit host next. Easy for me to read. An All-Star game, the Combine, or the Super Bowl? Good question. Combine, I love it in Indy. It needs to stay in Indy forever. I hope they don't ever move it out of there. It's the perfect location for exactly what we want it to be. And again, I lived in Indianapolis when the Colts moved there. I moved there then too. So I kind of have a connection with that. It's easy for me to get there. It's only like an extra 45 minutes of a drive for me to get to Indianapolis than it is to get to Detroit. So, living here in West Michigan. So I don't want that one. I want Combine to stay in Indianapolis. All-Star games are great. The only issue is I don't watch All-Star games. The NHL one I will occasionally tune into, but like the Pro Bowl, the NBA All-Star Weekend. Now, NBA All-Star Weekend, I love the events around the actual All-Star game, like the three-point shootout, the Rising Stars, all that. That stuff's great. I just don't like the actual game because nobody plays any defense in it. So that would be a good one, and I think that would be a good way to revitalize the Pistons and hopefully, get a stick in them to, do something, guys. I don't want to digress too much into that because Pistons are a bit of a mess right now. But that would be fun. Super Bowls, yeah, they can hold it. I'd tell you though, I think a Final Four, a women's Final Four would be great. A Frozen Four would be a lot of fun. I would enjoy going to something like that. But that's not like the super big event. But that's, again, Detroit deserves a ton of credit. I want to give Mayor Mike Duggan a lot of credit again, for organizing and coordinating and being the public face of a really, truly well done, well executed, well thought out NFL draft and massive event in Detroit. Good job, Mayor. Good job, City of Detroit. Good job, Detroit Police Department. Good job, the NFL, for putting on a very good event and coordinating very well with the city. Y'all did fantastic. I'm glad that Detroit's being seen in a good light like that. Makes me very happy. Couple more here. From Alabama. We were a decent secondary away from the Super Bowl last year, and that was the biggest area of focus. Call it now. NFC champions barring injury, or too much in-season randomness to predict, maybe to a % chance of playing in February. Well, there is certainly a lot of random in-seasonness, injuries, regression, chaos. Who knows? There's all kinds of crazy things can and do happen every year. I'll just say this. The Detroit Lions are no worse than the second best team in the NFC right now. And the only team that's ahead of them is San Francisco. I don't know if San Francisco got better this offseason. I know the Lions did. Their team's there. Green Bay's good. Yeah, they are. Sorry. I'm not gonna talk shit about it. That's a good football team. We're better. Philadelphia's a good football team. Dallas could be a good football team. I think the Rams could be a good football team, even without Aaron Donald. I think Tampa Bay's not going anywhere. Atlanta, as screwy as their draft was, God, if it works for a year, they got some talent there. Like there's some good teams in the NFC. Arizona's not going to be a cakewalk for anyone anymore. Like Seattle, they're not going to go away. No reason the Lions can't be. If San Francisco is 1A, Detroit's 1B. And does that get them? I think they should be the favorites to win the NFC North. I think they should be the favorites, along with San Francisco, to meet again in the NFC Championship game. And it wouldn't surprise me if this year's game was in Detroit. Percentage-wise is tough. I'm going to say, like, to win the NFC, there's a lot of good football teams. But if they stay healthy, I like their chances a lot. I'll say, I think, let's say San Francisco has an 18% chance. Let's give Detroit a 16.5% chance. And then that next group, like Green Bay, Philadelphia, they probably both get, I don't know, Philly's weird because they peaked early last year. I'm not sure they can get it back, but like they're above 10. Green Bay's above 10. Dallas probably at 10. Tampa Bay maybe 10-ish, maybe a little above that. I think they got better. There's always some weird surprise team, whether it's going to be Arizona or New Orleans, maybe Minnesota, maybe Chicago. Maybe it clicks early for Caleb Williams. God help us all if that's the case. Bears fans are going to be irrepressible. I'll be just really so. Can't say too much there because, as Lions fans, as Chris says, and I totally agree with him on this. Enjoy it, man. Like, we haven't had a chance to gloat. I want to take chances to gloat. That's just, I'm proud to be a Lions fan. I'm proud of this team. Proud to cover this team. I'm proud that when people come up and ask me, like, what's it like to switch from covering a perennial sad sack to covering, like, America's new en vogue team? It's freaking amazing. I love it. I don't want this to end. I want it to keep going, man. Let's go. Let's go get that Super Bowl. Let's push that number up to 20%. I'd be super happy with that. Wow. I hope so. I just can't help but be excited about the future of the Detroit Lions. I'm not going to apologize for that. I love it. Love this team. Love where they're going. Love where they've come from. Love the direction they're taking. And as I said towards the end of last year's Lions probably won't be the best Lions team. We're going to see 2024, 2025. This team can be better. Probably should be better than what they were last year. Now that they've got a little bit of experience under their belt. Now I will say that the other teams are going to be shooting for them. There's a difference there's a mindset switch that comes from being the predator to being the prey. And now they're sort of the prey. The Lions have that bullseye on. We'll see how well they wear that. And it leads into this last question I was going to ask. And I lucked into a segue there. I'd like to take credit for that. Can't. Sorry. Just worked out that way. It's about Jordan Love. And can he keep up with what he's doing? There's film out on it now. He played very well as a rookie. No question about it. They got young skill position around him. I think Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, the big dude from Virginia, their other wide receiver, like they got some guys, man. They added their offensive line. I do think their defense is vulnerable, but specifically about Jordan Love, yes, it will be tougher for him to do what he did last year because now teams know how to defend him better. And we've seen this before with quarterbacks that sort of rose up in one year and then they kind of fall. Daniel Jones is a good example. Baker Mayfield in Cleveland is a great example. Deshaun Watson in Houston, the year that he led them to that halftime lead against Kansas City, and then they blew it in the playoffs. And then the next year he wasn't as good. Like, defenses caught up. And the question becomes, how fast can those guys, Jordan Love being one of them, by the way, this is true of Aiden Hutchinson. Teams figured out how to get on Hutch a little bit. He figured it out pretty quickly how to make out the counter. Now, it's obviously easier to do as a pass rusher than it is as a quarterback. But I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. And by the way, the Packers have a little bit of that bullseye on them too. They're trying to make it sound like they're the hunters. But I think that they still have been good enough long enough that they've got some prey left in them too. It's going to be interesting to see how the Lions wear that hat and how Jordan Love and the Packers wear that hat too. But Lions are right now still a better team. If they stay healthy, I expect them to win the NFC North. That's the long and the short of it. Well, one last question here. And this was a good one. It's not really Lions related, but I like the question. And I encourage more questions like this. It's from Shane. If the NFL were to increase the roster size, what would they adjust the size to? And would the practice squad size change as well? This is something I have complained, whined, bitched, kvetched, whatever, for years, that the 53-man roster needs to have 53 people active every week. The notion of the inactive weekly players is antiquated at best, is ludicrous at worst. And no, I'm not talking about the Southern rapper who does those great State Farm commercials. It's a time that's come and gone. And when you ask like I've asked Pat Kerwin about it. I asked Vic Carucci about it, and they're like, there's not really a good explanation. Like nobody can. The best explanation is we've always done it that way, and we're going to keep doing it that way. And it's the best answer that I got was that it prevents you from like hoarding injuries, like it gives some injury balance. But like if you're paying all these dudes, let them play. Like if you have the 53-man roster and let the 53-man roster be active, so we don't have to go through the inactive BS every week, a lot of your problems are going to go away. Then you don't necessarily need to expand the roster to 58 or 60. I would like to see them, if they continue to do this ridiculous inactive thing, go to 60. Keep the practice squad about the same size, but maybe even drop it down to 12 from the 16. But that's been a big bugaboo of mine for a long time, and I know I'm not alone on that. And it's something that we'll go back in the Wayback Machine. When John Dorsey was the GM of the Cleveland Browns, I asked him and another guy, Jake Burns, from I forget where he's. I think the OBR now is where he's at, but great Browns analyst. We asked Dorsey straight up, like, how do you feel about the weekly inactives? And he's like, I don't really care, but I need more people to care to get that thrown over. So hopefully that happens. But anyways, guys, thanks for the great questions. Appreciate it. Hope to come with you live sometime soon. Chris and I are working on a couple things behind the scenes. If you haven't watched it, by the way, check out Dr. Liao's exceptional video on the rookies and their injuries, the draft picks of the Lions and their injuries. I thought it was really interesting. As somebody who's been around professional athletes and also parenthetically been injured a lot in my life, him explaining the core muscle surgery and all the different possibilities that it was fascinating to me. So thank you for that, Dr. Liao. Please check that out. Like and subscribe. And I will give one other quick plug because I spent a crap ton of time doing this and it was a lot of fun to do. If you like the trade tentacles that come out of like mega trades, I ran down all the tentacles of the Trey Lance trade from San Francisco back in the draft, back in 2021. And it wound up touching just about every team. Like there's so many things that came out of it. That's up at DraftWire. Please check that out. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun read. It's kind of cool to see like how expansive everything comes. It's not just the trade that you get. It's like all the offshoot moves from it that get facilitated by the picks that are in it too. I really enjoyed that. I hope you do too. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. And with that, this is Jeff Riston signing out. Go Lions.